Good afternoon, people. Good afternoon. So we are now at line 210, and Beowulf is on his boat. It's sailing for Denmark, and it's landing outside the coast after smooth sailing. The Geats, as it says, are going to vault over the ship's side and land on the coast. And they're going to thank God for an easy crossing for the calm sea. So what's going to happen? The Coast Guard on the Danish side is going to step out and address the Geats and talk and find their purpose for coming to Denmark. This language is typical of epics. It's very flowery. It's very descriptive. He won't just simply say, "Why are you here?" It's going to go on for many lines, and many metaphors are going to be established. It's a compliment. It's also establishing how Beowulf looks to a second party. Now, the Coast Guard himself does not have a name provided. He doesn't have a description other than being on a horse, and he is the typical Dane soldier. He is going to tell the Geats, "My job is to watch the waves for raiders, for any danger that comes to the Danish shore. Never before has a force under arms disembarked so openly, not bothering to ask if the sentries allowed them safe passage or the clan has consented. Nor have I seen a mightier man at arms on this earth than the one standing here. Unless I am mistaken, he is truly noble. This is no mere hanger-on in a hero's armor." Immediately, you have the Danish perception of Beowulf being worthy of recognition for his hero status. So this is the first outside perspective of Beowulf. And the Coast Guard is going to basically state, "I say it again, the sooner you tell where you come from and why, the better." So he has to appear a little gruff. Notice Beowulf has not stated his name yet. He's only referred to as the leader or the chief or the pilot. In this case, the line reads, "The leader of the troop unlocked his word hoard." I love that kenning right here, word hoard. Basically, just like someone can hoard possessions, Beowulf is shown as hoarding his words, the vocabulary in the back of his head. So he's unlocking his word hoard. The distinguished one delivered this answer: "We belong by birth to the Geat people, and we owe allegiance to Lord Hyalek." Some important items to point out. Notice Beowulf doesn't give his name yet. He does give his nationality, and he does give his king's name, however. So we're given a list of, we're going through a hierarchy of important items that Beowulf values. His name is not important at this venture, least of all to a Coast Guard. But his nationality and his king are important items. He will provide the name of his own father, Icthiau, right here. It would be a good idea to remember that name because sometimes Beowulf in the text will be referred to heir of Icthiau or son of Icthiau, the typical epithet that these type of writings love to use. They never will use the first names. They always refer to them by their heritage, which is a major theme in this text. What we have here then is a brief bio of his father leading up to the timing of Beowulf himself. And here at line 276, I come to proffer my wholehearted help and counsel. I can show the wise Hrothgar a way to defeat his enemy and find respite. His intentions come across as godly, as a value to society. He, like any typical comic book hero, he sees a wrong in the world and he wants to fix it. He's not out for personal gain. In the end, once he defeats his enemy, he does benefit. He does become famous and he does gain some material goods, but in the long run, fighting evil is his main goal. The Coast Guard from his horse, notice, answers, anyone with gumption and a sharp mind will take the measure of two things, what's said and what's done. He's going to believe Beowulf from the way he looks and how he speaks. His actions are mirroring how he looks. He's also measuring how he delivers his proclamation. I believe what you have told me, that you are a troop loyal to our king. So come ahead with your arms and your gear, and I will guide you. Beowulf, being the perfect hero, will exemplify the image of that hero. God has given him a smooth path through his hero career. The Danes will have someone watch over the boat, so the men with Beowulf leave the area and head towards Heorot. From the distance, when they see Heorot, it's going to rise up in the landscape radiant with gold. Despite the conditions of Grendel affecting the property, and despite it's haunted by this demon Grendel, in the daylight at the distance, the building is still a valuable commodity to the Danes, and it's still being presented as worthy of note. Something to consider. The narrator even tells you, majesty lodged there, and its light shone over many lands. The escort is guiding them to the dazzling stronghold and indicated the shortest way to it. So again, despite the conditions of the circumstances, the building itself still shows off a sense of pride to the people. Having led them up to the correct path, the Geats, Beowulf and the Geats, are going to step forward and find the herald right here. And the man who opens the door to them states, I am Hrothgar's herald and officer. I have never seen so impressive or large an assembly of strangers. Stoutness of heart, bravery, not banishment, must have brought you to Hrothgar. This is the second outside opinion that someone has of Beowulf. And again, it's complimentary. Wherever Beowulf goes, people see the value in him. And now, at this time, on line 343, right here, Beowulf states his name to the herald. The text reads, Beowulf is my name. If your lord and master, the most renowned son of Halfdane, will hear me out and graciously allow me to greet him in person, I am ready and willing to report my errand. The reason it's so important at this stage for Beowulf to acknowledge his name is the fact the herald is going to go forward to the king and present the fact the Geats have arrived. Beowulf wants to be proper, wants to have the correct credentials presented, and therefore he wants his name acknowledged. The herald's name, in fact, is named Wulfgar, and he is himself is renowned as a warrior, and he'll take the message to the king. He tells Hrothgar, "Do not refuse them, but grant them a reply. From their arms and appointment they appear well born and worthy of respect, especially the one who has led them this far. He is formidable indeed." Again, the compliments are being further along. Hrothgar has heard of him and states, "I used to know him when I was a young boy. His father before him was called Icthiau. Hrethel the Greek gave Icthiau his daughter in marriage. Their man is their son." Hrothgar is going to point out that God has brought Beowulf to him to defend them from Grendel. "This is my hope, and for his heroism I will recompense him with rich treasure." So bring him in immediately. So Wulfgar brings Beowulf forward. Beowulf again is going to say he is of Hyalec's kingdom. He's a kinsman, a thane of the king of the Geatland. And he's going to basically present himself like as in a job interview. This is not idle boasting for the sake of ego. This is boasting to promote one's worth, to show one's value as a warrior. This is why he goes through a list of strengths and possibilities that he can perform for Hrothgar. Starting when he was young, he states, "When I was younger, I had great triumphs. The news of Grendel, hard to ignore, reached me at home. Sailors brought stories of the plight you suffer in this legendary hall, how it lies deserted, empty, and useless, once the evening light hides itself under heaven's dome." Again, he's going to point out that the elders gave him permission to arrive here and to offer his help. Notice here it also says, "Because all knew of my awesome strength," they're allowing him to travel and to offer his help. This, again, is not ego. It's just a matter of being bluntly honest. The elders have seen Beowulf boltered in the blood of enemies when I battled and bound 5 beasts, raided a troll nest, and in the night sea slaughtered sea brutes. He has a past history of vanquishing evils and ridding the world of monstrous creatures. So his modus operandi is just basically to remove evil whenever he can bump into it. And he closes out this passage with, "Now I mean to be a match for Grendel, settle the outcome in single combat." Although he's brought the 12 men with him, the 14 men with him, he alone will be the one to take on Grendel. The men are, it states his own men are going to help him, but they are more as a aid as far as handing him weapons, or let me backtrack a little. Not specifically to hand him weapons, but to use their weapons while he's in the middle of the fight. Backup fighters. he also is going to state here, again, his main purpose. Therefore, to heighten Hygelac's fame and gladden his heart, I hereby renounce sword and the shelter of the broad shield, the heavy ward board. Hand to hand is how it will be, a life-to-death fight with the Fiend. He knows Grendel doesn't attack with weapons, so therefore Beowulf himself will not use weapons. He wants an even fight. He wants God to have the final judgment. If Grendel would win, it'll be a gruesome day. Likewise, this whole passage here is indicating Beowulf is aware of the circumstances. He knows the consequences of the fight. He's not afraid of the situation. He's going to take it on, and if he dies, and if Grendel will take his raw corpse, as he says here, and gorge on it, it's the way God intended it to be. So be it. He at least knows, because of his own personal faith and past dealings, God will take him into heaven. Fate goes ever as fate must. Again, this is a fatalistic universe. Hrothgar is going to compliment him. Here we go. And they are clearing room for the Geats to spend the night in the mead hall. The minstrel is going to sing, filling Heorot with his head-clearing voice, gladdening the great rally of Danes and Geats. Now, in line 499, we get a hint of trouble, so to speak. This is the first negative interaction Beowulf has had since his arrival in Denmark. This is the introduction of a character named Unferth. He will pop in and out of the text. So if you look at it as divided into thirds, part 1, part 2, and 3, part 1 and 2, Unferth plays a major part. He interacts with Beowulf more than once. So in this instance, Unferth, a son of Eglaf, spoke contrary words directly to Beowulf. He says, well, it's a reaction here. Beowulf's coming, his sea braving, made him sick with envy. So immediately you know Unferth is going to be negative. It also helps if you look at the description of Unferth, he's crouched at the king's feet. That use of the word crouched is indicating that he is not a typical heroic figure standing strong and tall beside the king. He's at the king's feet, huddled over. And here he says, "Are you the Beowulf who took on Breca in a swimming match on the open sea, risking the water just to prove you could win?" Now this is a taunt. He is insulting Beowulf in public, face to face. This insult that he's throwing at Beowulf is basically forcing Beowulf to admit he lost a swimming competition with his friend Breca. Here it is. "The ocean swayed, winter went wild in the waves, but you vied for 7 nights, and then he outswam you, came ashore the stronger contender. He was cast up safe and sound one morning among the Heatherims, that made his way to where he belonged in Bronding country. Breca made good his boast and was proved right." No one has ever outlasted an entire night against Grendel. So what it comes down to, Unferth is predicting that Beowulf will not be able, it's because he could not win a simple swimming match, he can't last against Grendel. The exchange that's going on right here in Anglo-Saxon terms is called a flyting exchange, when you have two figures insulting each other. It's like a rap battle in the modern language. Beowulf is going to respond to Unferth's statements. Sometimes you'll have a further second level exchange, but in this case, Beowulf is going to explain his side and drop the mic, and he's won the argument. Notice how it's introduced. Beowulf is going to reply openly, "Well, friend Unferth, you have had your say about Breck and me, but it was mostly beer that was doing the talking." So Beowulf recognizes that Unferth is drunk. He's more than tipsy. He's at that stage right before you black out. From Beowulf's perspective of the match, he and his friend had a friendly competition all their lives. But in this particular case, Brecca and Beowulf were swimming side by side for a long series of hours and days. At one point, a sea serpent, a sea monster, grabs Beowulf and drags him under. Beowulf has to fight off this monster. Once he's killed that one monster, then more monsters appear, and he has to fight off the additional species of serpents and dragons and water demons. Brecca, on the other hand, just keeps on going. He's not aware that Beowulf's in trouble. So here it is where he says, "Some ocean creature pulled me to the bottom. Pinioned fast and swathed in its grip, I was granted one final chance. My sword plunged, and the ordeal was over." Okay, so he fights off one beast, and here, "Gave as good as I got with my sword. My flesh was not for feasting on. There would be no monsters gnawing and gloating over their banquet at the bottom of the sea. Instead, in the morning, mangled and sleeping the sleep of the sword, they sloped and floated like the ocean's leavings. From now on, sailors would be safe. The deep sea raids were over for good." And then you have the dawning of the new day, and he's one killing off, as he says, "My sword had killed 9 sea monsters." And then the ocean lifts and carries them off to Finland. Okay, so that's just a background of the story itself. That's Beowulf's perspective. Now he's going to do his insult return, throw an insult back at Unferth. And he says, "Now I cannot recall any fight you entered, Unferth, that bears comparison. I don't boast when I say that neither you nor Brecca were ever much celebrated for swordsmanship or for facing danger in the battlefield. You killed your own kith and kin. So for all your cleverness and quick tongue, you will suffer damnation in the pits of hell." The fact is, that's a typo. The fact is, Unferth, if you were truly as keen or courageous as you claim to be, Grendel would never have gone away with such unchecked atrocity, attacks on your king, havoc in Heorot, and horrors everywhere. So basically, Unferth can't back up his own statements with his own actions, aside from being drunk. Now, right here, line 586, Beowulf knows Unferth's history. Unferth has killed, and it'll end up to be 2 of his brothers. Killing a family member in this culture is a great sin. It's not the same as going into battle and the glory of war fighting off an enemy. Killing family is dangerously, it's worth execution. I'll put it like that. It's worth your own execution. For whatever reason, we don't know why, but Unferth has got off from it. He's not being prosecuted for it. He's also still in the good grace of Hrothgar. So, Hrothgar, if you remember, Hrothgar had advisors who were pagan demon worshippers, and he turned a blind eye to them. Now you've got Unferth, who has a history that's well known by people in other countries. Unferth has killed his family members, but Hrothgar is forgiven him for that, or he doesn't seem to know it. So that's a point of contention. Hrothgar is showing, so what can be inferred, Hrothgar has bad judgment as far as choosing people to advise him, to guide him, to work with him to keep a community safe. And that's one of the reasons God has chosen to allow Grendel to exist in the first place within the territory. Always be comparing how Hrothgar reacts and how Hrothgar is described and how Beowulf reacts and how Beowulf is described. Hrothgar is very hesitant, very, I'm going to use the word weak. He's always going to be shown as old and elderly, whereas Beowulf is young and brash. He's a warrior. He's in the prime of his youth. Okay. So Beowulf wins that argument. Queen Wealhtheow is going to come into the room. That's Hrothgar's wife. She's observing the courtesies. She's going to be shown as the perfect hostess. She is the epitome of what this culture wants from a woman. Graciousness, politeness, calmness, unemotional reaction to situations, prepared to always hand out a drink to somebody who enters the room. For instance, here, so the helming woman, meaning Wealhtheow, went on her rounds, queenly and dignified, decked out in rings, offering the goblet to all ranks, treating the household and the assembled troop, until it was Beowulf's turn to take it from her hand. With measured words, she welcomed the Geat and thanked God for granting her wish that a deliverer she could believe in would arrive to ease their afflictions. Notice the difference between her reactions to Beowulf and Hrothgar's reactions to Beowulf. She is acting more passive and more submissive in the feminine role, and showing that she's been praying to God for help. Hrothgar, on the other hand, is being shown as patiently waiting for help, which is something totally different. He's not, in a sense, begging. He's not requesting God to send aid. He's just waiting for aid, waiting for maybe even his own men to get a backbone and fight back. Beowulf is going to tell Wealhtheow that he's going to perform to the uttermost what your people want, or he's going to perish in the attempt. It's do or die for him. It says here, and I shall fulfill that purpose, prove myself with a proud deed, or meet my death here in the mead hall. That is a formal boast. It's even stated it's a formal boast. In the Anglo-Saxon tradition, the hero always makes a formal boast in public. Everyone hears it, and he performs accordingly. And then you get this sense of nostalgia. It was like old times in the echoing hall. People feel confident in their choice of Beowulf. Okay, Hrothgar's going to leave the room after a while. Wishes good luck to Beowulf. He's going to give him an official title of Hall Warden. And then Hrothgar's going to state, "Never since my hand can hold a shield have I entrusted or given control of the Danes' Hall to anyone but you. Ward and guard it, for it is the greatest of houses." Another thing to note, he's given control of the mead hall to somebody outside of his community. Somebody in another country, for that matter. That's how strongly he feels Beowulf is the good guy, how Beowulf fits the mold of a hero. And then he warns Beowulf, "Beware of the enemy. There's nothing you wish for that won't be yours if you win through alive." Okay, so he and Hrothgar and Wilthio will leave the room. Beowulf is going to settle down with his men in the mead hall. And right here, he's talking to himself. Beowulf is going to say, and before he bedded down, Beowulf, that prince of goodness, proudly asserted, "When it comes to fighting, I count myself as dangerous any day as Grendel. So it won't be a cutting edge I'll wield to mow him down, easily as I might. He has no ideas of the arts of war, of shields or sword play, though he does possess a wild strength. No weapons, therefore, for either this night. Unarmed he shall face me, if he face me he dares. And may the divine Lord in his wisdom grant victory to whichever side he sees fit." So again, he's repeating what has already been established. He's going to fight without weapons. He knows there's a slight chance he could lose, but it's going to be hand to hand, just himself against Grendel the demon. And so he settles down for the night. Okay, so we're up to line 700. Right here it says, "The Lord was weaving a victory on his war loom for the weather Geats." So fate is being prepared for Beowulf to win. The narrator is letting you know in advance the Lord is working on Beowulf's side. They, meaning the Geats would crush their enemy and come through in triumph and gladness. The truth is clear. Almighty God rules over mankind and always has. Okay, so we'll stop here for the day. Tomorrow I'll post another series of discussions over the text. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, and we'll move along at the pace we're going. So hope you all are being safe. And if you need anything, as always, just let me know. And take it easy.